This Thanksgiving weekend, a best-of edition of Government Matters.
What our bill does is it takes the intent of Clinger-Co and modernizes it and brings financial responsibility to these chief officers.
FITARA and the role of the federal CIO.
They don't have the same legal restrictions that we do, so they are employing these capabilities right now.
The U.S. military plays catch-up on small-scale cyber attacks.
We have not had to secure any additional real estate on the Alexandria campus to accommodate these new hires. That's huge.
The U.S. Patent Office's telework strategy pays off. Government Matters starts right now.
From ABC 7 and News Channel 8, this is Government Matters.
Thanks for joining us. Government is the engine that runs this city. That's why Government Matters. Every Sunday, we'll bring you the week's top headlines in tech, security, and management. I'm your host, Morris Jones. This August, the D.C. Convention Center hosted the largest unmanned systems conference in the world. More than 600 exhibits from 40 countries showed off the latest drone tech by land, air, and sea. We sent our own eye in the sky, Hatsavella, reporting.
They're getting smaller and smaller. All types of unmanned vehicle systems known on the street as drones were the highlight on the convention floor. Some of them are already being used. Look at the spinning globe.
We're like a police helicopter in a sense.
A much smaller chopper with immense capabilities called the Kestrel. It is a wide area surveillance system that helps track people and vehicles in a city-sized area like D.C. Attached to a blimp, it is the only 360-degree surveillance system that can help in areas with heightened security, threat detection, and real-time tracking capability. Right now, it is being used in 12 military bases in Afghanistan, constantly looking for trouble.
You have to watch everywhere all the time because you don't know when they're gonna pop out and blow up an IED or something like that.
If an explosive device goes off, the user can split the screen and figure out who pulled the trigger. On another window, they can see where the bad guy is headed.
In a gunfight, we can tell them where the other guys are and where they're moving.
Domestically, Logos, a Virginia-based company, has tested the system on the U.S.-Mexican border.
We can camp over a near border urban area and watch days to weeks of the network of the drug trade, so that instead of getting the low-level guys that are just, bringing backpacks of marijuana across the border, we can eventually get to the head of the network, which is clearly where you want to be.
During the demonstration near Nogales, the system helped border officers make more than 100 arrests in a one-week period. Now, more and more of this technology is being used in the commercial sector. For example, some of these robots are used at nuclear facilities. The attached cameras help workers get into dangerous places.
We're just really kind of at the cusp of seeing what the potential for this technology is.
As the Obama administration draws down troops overseas, the need for this technology is popping up in other industries.
Oil and gas monitoring, environmental monitoring, mapping, surveying, the list goes on and on.
The annual conference hopes to continue to teach the benefits of the technology by showing people what it looks like and how it works. In Washington, Hatsavella for Government Matters.
Big data is a big deal. The White House thinks it will strengthen national security, transform learning, and accelerate the pace of discovery. So it's convenient that the world's largest concentration of data centers is just 30 miles west of D.C. Once again, here's Hatsavella.
Construction underway at Raging Wire. It's one of about 40 data centers in Loudoun County.
You can think of data centers as the factories of the information age.
And in the case of this California company, they design, build, and operate all of it. It all started 7 years ago when the county started to think about the kind of industry it wanted to attract. Data centers were an option that made sense because Loudoun County already had the needed elements in place.
They needed abundant power, affordable power. They needed multiple fiber connections, and they needed green space where they could actually build their data centers.
Buddy Reiser is the acting economic development director for Loudoun County. He's been spearheading efforts to bring more and more data centers to what they now call Data Center Alley. Reiser says the centers have become vital to the county's business environment, not to mention our way of life, not just here in the U.S., but the world.
70% of the world's internet goes through Loudoun County. It's an incredible number when you think about it.
You can hear how loud it is in here. That's the sound of thousands of servers powering powering millions of websites.
You can't use your major credit card. You can't buy a book online. You can't watch the Discovery Channel. You can't even update your Facebook status without going through the internet infrastructure of Loudoun County.
And there's more. Data centers have thousands of technology companies running their operations out of their locations.
We have so much demand on schools and roads. Data centers bring a lot of revenue in, and they don't have a big demand on services.
He estimates the centers provide the county $60 million in tax revenue each year.
Without a doubt, Data Center Alley is the largest concentration of the best data centers in the world.
In Loudoun County, the data center industry has doubled in size in the last 5 years, and it continues to grow, as seen by the current construction at Raging Wire. In addition to what you see, the company has already bought and plans to develop 78 acres of land in Ashburn to build 1.5 million square feet of data center space. In Ashburn, Virginia, Hatsavella for Government Matters.
We'll turn from headlines to tech straight ahead on Government Matters. The troubled launch of healthcare.gov gave new momentum to FITARA, the Federal IT Acquisition Reform Act. My one-on-one interview with the bill's co-sponsor, Congressman Darrell Issa, next. In Technology Matters, FITARA, the Federal IT Acquisition Reform Act. Last month, it passed the House with bipartisan support as part of the 2014 defense bill. The goal? To increase the accountability and authority of federal CIOs. Earlier this week, I sat down with one of the bill's co-sponsors, House Oversight and Government Reform Committee Chairman Darrell Issa. I remember in the 1990s, a similar bill known as the Clinger-Cohen Act passed in the Senate, later the eGov Act. How is this new bill different?
Well, it really builds on Clinger-Cohen. That bill decided that we had to professionalize the IT workforce, and people understand that you have a CIO, somebody who's in charge of these programs, who's in charge of the budget of spending on IT. Except it turns out that except for one CIO, none of them have budget authority. What our bill does is it takes the intent of Clinger-Cohen, modernizes it, and brings financial responsibility to these chief officers.
How much money will it save U.S. taxpayers?
Saving money is not the primary goal of the bill. Budgets have been created, $81 billion plus accountable for IT. What we want is we want to get the value out of that $81 billion. There's a plenty big backlog of good IT programs that, if implemented, would save money, would reduce waste, would allow for greater accountability, even make our war fighters safer in the field. What we want is that $81 billion to go further and do what it was intended to do.
You have a key ally in this effort in Representative Jerry Conley. He's urged the White House to sign this bill provided it passes in the Senate. You and Conley don't always see eye to eye. Talk about that relationship.
Well, I think when it comes to creating real opportunities for efficiencies, Jerry and I can work together. Often what he finds himself representing the federal workforce rather than the efficiency and effectiveness of the federal workforce. In this case, we're on the same line, and I think he's acting much more like his predecessor, Tom Davis, who always was looking for ways to make the federal government do its job better.
Earlier this month at a public IT event, Conley criticized the Office of Management and Budget. He says OMB dropped the ball on IT reform. Do you agree with him?
They did, but it's not uncommon. You know, OMB always says, let us handle it, we have the authority, and then you get a new OMB director and he or she starts over with the same line. I think Jerry and I both have learned that Congress has a role, and the role is we pass a law, it outlives any OMB director.
Won't this change, in essence, cause some friction between the CIOs and the appropriations within each of those 16 agencies?
I think it's important to understand that Congress creates appropriations, puts money into a budget, and routinely takes input as to reuse of money. And that reprogramming right now, Congress looks and says, who actually decides where the reprogramming request comes from? It'd be very good to have the CIOs at the table saying, this is the reprogramming authority I need, why I need it, what it's for, and be accountable.
Early on, some software companies were concerned that this act has a bias for open source solutions, meaning free software that will help the government save money. Have those concerns been addressed?
We have addressed it, but we haven't backed off. open source, writing software that can be used again and again and built on is a fundamental point that I think the government has to get to. Often we assume that if we buy proprietary software from somebody else, that somehow it's better. But the truth is, we've often paid for that proprietary software, and when we want it modernized, we pay again, and when a different part of government wants it, we pay again. What we'd like to do is, to the greatest extent possible, build on software that we don't have to pay for again. We have good support from the industry for it. We understand there are some who would like to see this narrowly construed, but we think it's a real money saver. It also means that people will build on the same base of reliable software.
We'll turn from tech to security straight ahead on Government Matters. The U.S. military lags behind other countries when it comes to carrying out small-scale cyber attacks. Why? And what's the hang-up? Our expert weighs in next. In Security Matters, the next step for U.S. cyber ops. The Center for Strategic and International Studies and Georgia Tech Research Institute studied the issue. The question, should the military grant smaller units the authority to carry out small-scale attacks? Author Maren Lee tells me in this arena, America is already behind the curve. Your report examines the role of cyber operations in the U.S. military, more specifically, the potential of offensive cyber tools at levels below that of a combatant command. Explain that passage for me.
The challenge has been, as we have developed our cyber capabilities, they've principally focused on strategic level targets and for use by strategic level commanders. So cyber tools utility, one could argue, is best suited for that level of command because for a variety of different reasons. But they also have utility, at least that was the proposition with which we entered the study, at lower levels of command, that more junior commanders could use them, albeit under different conditions and for different purposes, than do higher level commanders.
You think cyber weapons have incredible potential, that they're fast and versatile. Tell me more.
Obviously, one of the biggest challenges the U.S. faces right now is its global responsibilities, but a shrinking force. And so that argues that we need things that can operate with great speed as events are unfolding more quickly than they ever have, and almost anywhere. Cyber suits those characteristics very, very well.
There are plenty of concerns about this approach, especially its legal implications. How do you study those implications if the technology itself doesn't exist?
Well, that's a big challenge, right? And I think we had a workshop that specifically looked at what the legal and policy implications were of using these tools at lower levels. And what the legal scholars all agreed upon was we have legal processes that can accommodate cyber weapons. So it really is more of a question of what the policymakers are comfortable with, and those are questions that have to do with technical feasibility, with intelligence gain-loss decisions, and larger policy questions about whether or not we want to cross a cyber threshold under certain conditions, but that the principal concerns are not, in fact, legal.
You recommend robust experimentation by the U.S. military. What would that involve?
It really involves thinking more deeply about how lower echelon commanders might want to employ this kind of capability. So, for example, if I'm a conventional commander of a ground unit that is trying to conduct an operation in a small area. I own a town and I'm trying to maneuver forces to recover hostages or something like that. How might I use cyber tools to enable that mission? I could, for example, achieve some level of cover by blackening out a couple block area of electricity for some period of time as I try to maneuver through it. Or I could stop vehicles potentially if I was uncertain whether or not they posed a threat. Those kinds of things, because we have been having the cyber conversation at this very high level, we have not yet taken down to that lower level commander and really explored how would they use them. Could we technically deliver that capability? And then what would be the right approval process to meet to balance the legitimate concerns, the policy concerns that we would have to enable that.
Are other countries already conducting the experiments that you just outlined?
They're not experimenting, they're using. So they're beyond experimentation. They don't have the same legal restrictions that we do. So they are employing these capabilities right now.
The federal budget is a big part of this equation. Austerity can have a chilling effect on research and development. Will the U.S. be reliant on its partners in the private sector to push this envelope?
They will be, and they should be. That's where the real capability resides to deliver the technical kinds of tools that we would need in this space. But it starts with the military defining what a requirement would look like, really thinking about what they would want. There's not a commercial customer for that, in theory, and so the military has to better articulate what that might look like in order to get the kinds of tool development that they would need from the commercial sector.
Maureen Lead from CSIS, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll turn from security to management straight ahead on Government Matters. In 2010, President Obama signed the Telework Enhancement Act into law. Since then, one agency has led the charge. I'll check in with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office next. In management matters, trends in telework. The U.S. Patent and Trademark Office has long been considered a leader in telework implementation across the federal government. Now they're even letting managers telework full-time. It's a trend I discussed with the U.S. PTO Senior Telework Advisor, Danette Campbell. How many PTO employees telework and how much of the time do they spend doing it?
We know currently we have 11,600 employees on campus. And of that 11,600, we have 7,700 employees working from home anywhere between 1 and 5 days a week. And of those, we have more than 4,000 working from home full-time.
In July, your office announced a new telework schedule that allows 110 managers to telework full-time. Tell us about the pilot study that got you involved with this.
Well, you know, we in the patent organization have had challenges with keeping our patent managers who had participated in patent manager telework programs, who had supervised patent examiners who were full-time teleworkers. And so patent management and executives came up with a plan to offer a full-time hoteling initiative to our patent managers. And so we decided that in May of 2012, I believe it was, to start a pilot. We ran a pilot for 6 months with 11 supervisory patent examiners, whom we refer to as SPEs. And as I said, we ran this for 6 months. We collected data, we analyzed the data, and in the end determined that this would be a great fit for our patent managers who would like to work from home full-time. They're still able to manage their workers just as they were when they were on the USPTO Alexandria campus.
Technically speaking, how can a manager working from home effectively manage other people who are also teleworking and measure productivity?
We have very clearly defined performance measures in place. Our expectations are also very clearly defined. And patent examination is basically production driven, so it makes remote work very, very easy.
Technology plays an instrumental role here. Besides a telephone and computer, what other tools are necessary?
Everyone has a universal laptop, and when an individual has been trained for telework, they receive IT and non-IT training. And once that happens, they then receive a combination to the lock that's on their laptop in their office. They can unlock that laptop and take it home to work from home. Everything is encrypted here, so there is no possibility of data becoming jeopardized. We all have secure IDs with a rotating number on this, what we call a fob. Everyone is assigned a PIN to get in. We have we sign in with our user ID and an additional password. So it's like 3 levels of security prior to even getting into our systems.
That's very impressive. Mm-hmm. What kind of financial impact has an aggressive telework strategy had on your agency's budget?
Well, I'll tell you, Morris, I think one of the most incredible things about this particular initiative is the fact that our telework programs, especially our full-time telework programs, have enabled the agency to avoid securing annually about $20 million in real estate. This initiative, the full-time initiative, has a huge impact on real estate here at the USPTO. In 1997, when this initiative started with 18 examining trademark attorneys, we had about 5,000 employees at the USPTO. You fast forward to 2013, we now have, as I believe I mentioned, 11,600. We have not had to secure any additional real estate on the Alexandria campus to accommodate these new hires. That's huge.
You advise other agencies on their options regarding telework. Do you ever advise agencies against it?
Of course not. But what I do say is that this is a very succinct business strategy, and it really has to be about the business case scenario. And certainly while this agency cares a great deal about its employees, and I think all federal agencies do, it really has to be more about the business impact that telework is going to have on that agency and its employees.
Danette Campbell, good luck and thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
We'll turn from management to final matters straight ahead. Thanks for being with us. I'm Morris Jones. Your week is filled with other matters. Save Sundays for us.